I could hear the sound of my heartbeat, louder than any noise around me. My chest felt like it was caving in, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, as I watched him walk away. The man I loved, the one I thought would never leave me, was walking hand in hand with her, the woman who wanted my life. His cold, indifferent gaze met mine, and in that instant I knew. I was no longer the one he chose. I was discarded. I was nothing to him anymore. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We had it all. A house, dreams, a future. Or so I thought. And then she appeared, suddenly a woman with a sharp smile and a hunger in her eyes. She wanted everything I had. She wanted him, and she wanted my life. It happened so quickly, like a storm that swept through everything I held dear. The moment I learned of their affair, I couldn't stop the flood of emotions that overtook me: rage, betrayal, and devastation. I tried to fight for him. I begged, I pleaded, but it didn't matter. He'd already made his decision. The man who once swore to love me forever had fallen for her. I couldn't understand it, couldn't grasp the reality of it. It felt like a dream I couldn't wake from, but it was real. The truth was clear as day. I was not enough. She had taken my place, and I had nothing left but a broken heart. It wasn't long before they announced it to the world. He was with her now. It felt like a dagger in my heart every time I saw their pictures together, every time I heard people talk about them. The pain was unbearable, but I refused to let it consume me. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to remain the victim of this betrayal. I was going to rise from the ashes. Days turned into weeks, and I watched them. I studied them. I learned everything about her, every little detail. She had taken so much from me, but she would never take my power. The woman who had once seemed so perfect, so untouchable, now felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. And I was going to find the missing pieces. The day I decided to strike back, I had already planned everything. There would be no more hiding in the shadows, no more crying over what was lost. I would take back what was mine. The first step was getting close to her, pretending to be someone she could trust. The fake smiles, the soft words, they were all part of the game. She had no idea what was coming. As the days passed, I kept up the act, slowly earning her trust. I played the part of the supportive friend, the one who understood her struggles, the one who listened when she needed to vent. But all the while, I was digging deeper into her world, learning about her fears, her desires, her insecurities. Every secret she thought was safe became my weapon. I was becoming something new, something stronger. There were moments when I saw the cracks in her facade, moments when she seemed vulnerable, when the perfect image she worked so hard to maintain faltered. And in those moments, I felt the power shift. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't just playing a game anymore. I was in control. But it wasn't just about her. No, it was about him, too. I had to make him regret his decision. He had abandoned me for her, but he had no idea who I had become. He thought he could replace me, thought he could throw me away like a useless object. But I would show him that I was irreplaceable. I wasn't just the woman he left behind. I was the woman who would make him realize the biggest mistake of his life. One night, after a few months of careful planning, I finally saw my opportunity. She trusted me, and I had everything I needed. I sent a message to him, a simple text, nothing too bold, just a reminder of what he had left behind. It didn't take long for him to respond. His words were empty, hollow, but they were enough to make him realize that he hadn't fully erased me. He hadn't fully erased what we once had. I watched as he started to pull away from her. She didn't know it yet, but I was already taking back what was mine. The tables were turning, and with each passing day, her perfect little world was falling apart. I was no longer the victim. I was the victor. But just as I thought I had everything under control, something unexpected happened. She started to suspect me. She started to question my motives. It was a dangerous game I was playing, and one wrong move could unravel everything. But I wasn't afraid. I had come too far to turn back now. The tension between us grew, and I could see the fear in her eyes whenever we crossed paths. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know exactly what. And that was what gave me the upper hand. As her world continued to unravel, I knew it was only a matter of time before she cracked. And when she did, I would be there, ready to make her pay. The moment came faster than I expected. It was the final confrontation. She confronted me, accusations flying from her lips. She tried to make it seem like I was the one who had wronged her, that I had somehow betrayed her. But I didn't flinch. I stood my ground, and I saw the fear in her eyes as I laid out everything. The truth, my truth. She had stolen everything from me, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. I didn't give her a chance to fight back. With every word, I took control, and with every step, I watched her crumble. The woman who had once wanted my life now knew what it felt like to lose everything. The betrayal she had inflicted on me was now coming full circle, and she was the one left with nothing. As for him, he watched it all unfold, helpless and regretful. The man who had once chosen her over me now realized the true cost of his actions. He tried to make it right, but it was too late. I had already moved on, already claimed the power that had once been taken from me. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and I wasn't the woman he thought he could control. In the end, I had my revenge. I had reclaimed my life, my power, and my worth. She got what she deserved, every bit of it. And as I stood tall, watching her fall from grace, I realized that the woman I had become was stronger than I could ever have imagined. Reborn, empowered, and unbreakable. I had won. You said. The air felt different now. The weight that had once pressed down on me was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of liberation. The pain, the anger, it was all gone, replaced with a clarity I hadn't known in months. I had faced the darkness of betrayal, clawed my way out, and now I stood on the other side, unrecognizable to the person I once was. But as the days passed, I realized something I hadn't expected. My victory, my revenge, it wasn't just about them. It wasn't about proving to him or her that I was better. It wasn't about humiliating them or even about making them regret their choices. No, it was about me. It was about reclaiming myself, my identity, my strength. I had been broken, but now I was whole. In the quiet moments when I found myself alone, I reflected on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the way I had been discarded. It had hurt so deeply, but now, as I looked back, I saw the lessons hidden within that pain. It wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation. I had become someone stronger, someone capable of standing tall even when the world tried to tear me down. I watched them from afar, the two of them, and I felt no satisfaction in their misery. They had what they wanted, but they had no idea of the cost. They had lost themselves, too. The woman who had once sought my life now seemed like a shadow of the person she used to be. He, too, was different, lost, regretful, and broken. I had taken what was mine, but in the process, they had lost everything they had. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had thought I was the one who would crumble, the one who would break under the weight of their betrayal. But I hadn't. I had risen from the ashes, stronger than ever. And they had destroyed each other in the pursuit of something they couldn't even fully understand. I didn't need them anymore. I didn't need anyone who didn't see my worth. The world was mine now, and with each passing day, I reclaimed more of myself. I had found the strength to move forward, to rebuild my life from the ground up. The future no longer seemed like an uncertain blur. It was mine to shape, mine to mold into something far greater than I could have imagined before. There were days when I thought about him. I wondered if he thought about me, if he regretted his decision. I wondered if he ever truly saw me, or if I was just a placeholder in his life, someone to fill the gap until she came along. But those thoughts were fleeting. I had learned not to dwell on the past, not to let it control my future. I wasn't the same person I had been when I loved him. That version of me was gone. And the woman I had become was far stronger, far more capable of handling the life ahead. I had learned to trust myself, to believe in my own worth. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. The day came when I was offered a new opportunity, a chance to start over, to move forward in a way I never thought possible. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But I took it without hesitation. I had already faced the hardest part, coming face to face with the worst kind of betrayal, and survived. Now, everything else felt like a new challenge, one I was ready to face head on. I looked at my reflection in the mirror that morning and smiled. I didn't recognize the woman I saw, but in the best possible way. She was confident, independent, and unapologetically strong. I had earned this transformation. I had fought for it with everything I had, and now it was mine to claim. As for him, I had no desire for reconciliation. The man who had abandoned me was a stranger now. I had no space in my life for someone who didn't value me, someone who had left me behind for a woman who only wanted to tear me down. I didn't need his apology or his regret. I had everything I needed within myself. She, too, had faded into the background of my life. The woman who had sought my downfall had become nothing more than a lesson in disguise. I had once seen her as a threat, but now she was a symbol of the strength I had gained. Every step of my journey had brought me closer to the woman I was meant to be, and for that, I was grateful. Justice had been served, not in the way I had originally imagined, but in a way far more powerful. I had taken control of my own destiny, and in doing so, I had left behind the chains of the past. The bitterness, the hatred, it no longer had a place in my heart. I had freed myself from the past, and in that freedom, I had found peace. In the end, I realized that the greatest revenge wasn't in making them regret their actions. It wasn't in destroying them the way they had tried to destroy me. No, the greatest revenge was in living my life to the fullest, in becoming the person they never thought I could be. It was in walking away, head held high, knowing that I had won. They had wanted my life, but I had reclaimed it. They had taken what was mine, but I had taken it back tenfold. I was no longer a victim of their betrayal. I was a survivor, a warrior, and I had earned my rebirth. And as I moved forward, I knew there was nothing left for me to prove. I had already proven everything I needed to. They could live in their regret, trapped in the consequences of their own choices. As for me, I was free. I was reborn. And I was unstoppable. The days that followed felt surreal. I had been walking on the same streets, living the same life, but everything felt different. The woman I was before had disappeared. There was no more room for fear, no more space for doubt. I stood taller now, and I realized the power I had within myself. I was no longer defined by the man who had abandoned me or the woman who had tried to take everything I held dear. I was defined by my strength, my resilience, and my journey to reclaim my life. I spent more time reflecting on my transformation, seeing how far I had come. When I thought back to the woman who once believed she couldn't survive without him, I barely recognized her. She had been fragile, caught up in love and pain. But now, that version of me felt like a distant memory. The person I had become was strong, fierce, and fully aware of her worth. The world no longer seemed like an obstacle, but a playground to shape and conquer. I realized something else, too. As much as I had gained from my revenge and transformation, I had also lost a part of myself in the process. Revenge, though satisfying, had come with a cost. I had let my anger guide me. And while it had driven me to become someone greater, it had also shaped my outlook on life. But as time went on, I learned to let go of the bitterness. I didn't need that rage anymore to fuel my fire. I had found a better, stronger source of motivation, one that came from within. One evening, as I sat by the window, watching the sun set on the horizon, I realized how much peace I had gained. I had let go of the hurt, the pain that had once weighed me down. I was free from the shadows of my past. But most importantly, I had learned that revenge was only the first step in my journey. The real victory came when I stopped needing it, when I stopped letting the actions of others dictate my happiness. The path to healing had been long, but it was a path I had walked alone without needing anyone to validate my journey. I had proven to myself that I was enough, that I didn't need to depend on anyone else for my sense of self-worth. It was a freeing realization. It was a rebirth of sorts, a birth of independence and self-love that could never be taken away. Months passed, and life continued to unfold in ways I couldn't have imagined. I became someone people looked up to. Those who had once pitied me now admired my strength, my ability to rise from the ashes. I realized I had built something greater than revenge. I had built a legacy of resilience, one that would stay with me no matter where life took me. I thought about him occasionally. I wondered if he ever regretted his decision, but those thoughts were fleeting. It didn't matter anymore. He was a part of my past, a lesson I had learned, but no longer a presence in my life. And as for her, I had no space for bitterness or hatred. She was a chapter that had closed. My focus was now on myself, my future. I started taking more risks, doing things I never would have done before. I traveled, explored new interests, and met new people. I found that life, when lived with freedom and purpose, was full of endless possibilities. I no longer felt like a victim of anyone's choices. I felt like the author of my own story, and that story was only beginning. One day, I received a letter. It was from him. I had almost forgotten about the man who had once been my everything. The letter was filled with apologies, regret, and pleas for forgiveness. But as I read his words, something inside me shifted. I realized that I no longer needed his forgiveness. I didn't need his approval. The woman I had become had no room for the past. I was proud of the strength I had found on my own. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer where it would remain, an artifact of a life that no longer had any hold over me. It wasn't about closure. It wasn't about getting back what was lost. It was about realizing that I had already healed. The power was mine now, not his, not hers. As the years went by, I continued to grow. I built a life I was proud of, filled with love, peace, and a sense of accomplishment. I had discovered that true empowerment came not from revenge or validation from others, but from the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth. I didn't need anyone to confirm that I was strong. I knew it. There were moments when I saw them, him and her, but it no longer stung. They had their own lives, their own choices to make. But I had moved on. I had outgrown the need to compare myself to them, to measure my worth against their approval. In the end, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't about destroying them. It was about becoming someone who didn't need revenge to feel whole. It was about rising above the pain and choosing a life of strength, of independence, of freedom. And as I looked forward, I knew that the best was yet to come. The world had tried to break me, but I was still standing. And that was enough. I had not only taken back what was mine, I had created something far more powerful. I had created a future where I could thrive, a future where I was the one who controlled my destiny. The woman they thought they could break was now unstoppable, and I would never let anyone take that power from me again. The more time passed, the clearer my purpose became. I wasn't simply surviving anymore. I was thriving. I had learned to cherish my independence, to make decisions without the fear of others' judgments clouding my mind. Each day was a new opportunity to build on the foundation I had laid, brick by brick, over the course of my journey. The world no longer intimidated me. Instead, it felt like a canvas waiting for me to create something beautiful. I had become the version of myself I had always wanted to be, but didn't know how to reach. The anger and bitterness that had once burned so fiercely within me had cooled, replaced by a calm, quiet confidence. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. The person I had become was enough, and that truth brought with it a peace I had never known before. Every choice I made felt empowered, even the small ones. I started to trust my instincts again, the way I had once trusted my heart when I had loved him. But now, that trust was solely for myself. I no longer doubted my ability to take on the world. I didn't need validation from anyone else. I had become my own source of strength, my own source of validation. And yet, every so often, a thought would flicker in my mind. What if I had stayed? What if I had let go of the need for revenge and simply accepted the betrayal, moved on in a different way? But as quickly as those thoughts came, I dismissed them. Staying would have meant surrendering my power, giving them the satisfaction of seeing me stay small, trapped in the role of the victim. No, I had made the right choice. It was the only choice I could have made. One afternoon, as I walked through the city, I bumped into someone who reminded me of the woman I had once been. She was looking lost, fragile, weighed down by something unseen. She reminded me so much of myself in the days before the betrayal. I stopped for a moment, just watching her. I wondered what had brought her to this point, what pain she carried. And then I realized something. I wasn't the same person who had once been in that position. I had grown, and now I was strong enough to offer something different, something healing, instead of continuing the cycle of hurt. I approached her, gently asking if she was okay. We began talking, and as she shared her story, I saw the pain in her eyes, the hurt that mirrored mine. I saw the darkness that came from being discarded, from being made to feel unworthy. But instead of offering her pity, I offered her a path forward. I shared my story with her, not to make her feel sorry for me, but to show her that she, too, could rise from the ashes. She listened, her eyes brightening as I spoke, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope in her. It was a feeling I hadn't expected, but one that made me realize something important. My journey wasn't just about me. It was about using the strength I had gained to help others, to be a beacon for those who needed to find their own way out of the darkness. I didn't know what became of her, but I like to believe that she, too, found her strength, that she, too, realized that the only way forward was through embracing her own power. As I continued to walk down that street, I felt a sense of gratitude wash over me. Grateful for everything I had been through. Grateful for the pain that had shaped me into the person I was today. Grateful for the lessons learned. And most importantly, grateful for the future that awaited me, one that was filled with endless possibilities, with no limits to what I could achieve. The past, with all its hurt and betrayal, was behind me now. It had played its part in shaping me, but it no longer had a hold over my future. The woman who had once been broken was no more. She had been replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who could look forward without fear. I looked ahead, feeling the wind in my hair, the sunlight warming my skin. The world was wide open, and I was ready to face it head on. There was nothing left to prove. There was no need for revenge anymore, because I had already won. And as I walked, I knew I was heading toward a life full of empowerment, freedom, and the knowledge that no one would ever have the power to break me again. I had taken everything from the ashes of betrayal and turned it into gold. And with that, I was ready to claim everything the future had to offer. The best was yet to come.